we're ready to begin. Hello, everybody. It's a great pleasure to see so many of you here in person, and I hope you're enjoying the day so far. I certainly am. I've already eaten far too much. And welcome to those of you who are joining us virtually. And just to tell you that as well as our revered alumni, we have with us today, both in person and and virtually, several of the academics and experts at Cambridge who are interested in this subject matter. So a special welcome to them and for their interest in what we're trying to do here. I've been very fortunate to be president for a year now, and I'm pleased to say that there are many familiar faces among you, but I've also enjoyed getting to know quite a few of you so far today. I've been very grateful to you for your tremendous support for the college and for me personally as I found my way in my new role as somebody who had never been to Cambridge or Oxford. I think I'm now across some of the strange ways, and the speaking to people in Latin is just quite normal for me now. I knew before I arrived that the financial support which you as alumni gave the college was key to all that we did and the support we could give students. What I've discovered, and it's really been a wonderful thing over this year, is all the other ways in which you help students with careers advice, internships, and generous amounts of your valuable time. And above all, it's what you have achieved which is the inspiration to our students. And I realize now, in a way that I didn't before, that you as alumni are as much a part of our community as our students, our fellows, and our staff. And thank you. And I'd also like to particularly thank you for those of you who have given feedback on the newsletters with your thoughts and ideas, and please keep them coming. Today, several of you have said, for example, that you would really like to understand how things have changed for our students in STEM subjects over the decades. And I think that's a really good point, and I'm going to get somebody working on that. Rob, you can get going already. This has been a year of change and development for us. At last, we have emerged from the strictures of COVID, and students could begin to enjoy their college and university experiences to the full. Next week will be the first proper Freshers' Week, and actually it will be the first one that I personally have experienced. I'm just a little bit nervous. Our students have gained great success academically, despite all the difficulties they've had, with more than 89% gaining good honours degrees in the last round of results. And Murray Edwards is, I am assured by the JCR, now seen as a cool college, not an easy thing to achieve. And I can attest, it has a really great social life in the evenings, and I've been assured that it's now a real destination for students from other colleges. And I think that's so important for our students to feel good about themselves. And now, with the help of some of you, our new daytime art cafe is about to open as a destination both to study and relax. And I hope that some of you will feel that you can drop in. And a really nice element of it is that it's going to be a place that staff, fellows, and students can all mix together in an informal way so that we're a proper community, but also people visiting the women's art collection you always have to have a cup of tea and a postcard, don't you, if you see art. Thanks to a very generous £1 million donation from Christina and Peter Dawson, we're setting up a new Wellbeing service for students, which will give all our students support in ensuring that their study is not at the expense of their health. This term, the college will admit the highest proportion ever of students from disadvantaged backgrounds. 25.9% of our students come from backgrounds with indices of multiple deprivation, and we also have our first 5 students on the foundation year. Many of you have told me that widening participation is of great importance to you, and I'm also delighted that we have become the first Cambridge college to appoint a full-time, professionally experienced Head of Access and Student Recruitment. This appointment is a mark of how determined we are here to reach out to students from diverse backgrounds who might never have expected to go to Cambridge. I'm grateful to those of you who have supported our Haringey experiment in working with school students to offer them academic support and encouragement. Thanks to you, 2 of our fellows and a group of our students have been working with comprehensive school students in their first years of A-level, including lectures, advice, and setting up a summer reading group. And just today I heard from one of the fellows, Leo Meller, who's been doing it, how they explained to potential applicants that the importance of reading books outside the curriculum and help them with a reading list of here are some books that you might want to read. And some of these students hadn't realized that when you were at an interview for any university, they will ask you, well, what else have you read? And it might seem so basic to some of us, but they had literally not known that that might be expected. I'm also very pleased to say that we've appointed our first ever Director of Student Development to run an expanded Gateway student support scheme. Your donations and the huge amount of time you have been given have been crucial to Gateway's success in recent years. But now, with extra effort put in, all our students will receive more help, and we will be able to give additional support to students who come from schools which may not have been able to teach them the sorts of study, research, and writing skills required at Cambridge. We now give our students unrivaled levels of support outside their academic subject studies. I'm also grateful to those of you who have supported the Bridging Project, which will give extra support to a number of students this year. 8 students will get personal coaching over the whole of their first year. And the students to whom we're giving extra support are brilliant young women. There's no doubt about that. But, and it's, they've got extraordinary results to get in here, but they haven't been given the sorts of skills and confidence that highly selective schools might give. And a very basic thing is being taught how to say what your opinion is rather than what the teacher's opinion is. Again, that might seem really, really obvious to lots of you, but in some schools they have not been encouraged to express their own opinion, and they go into a supervision with, as one student at Cambridge has put it, with a bloke like Boris Johnson, and they find it can be a bit of an overwhelming experience. So something as basic as teaching you, well, here are the sorts of things that will be expected, and be confident about giving your own view. That seems very basic, but it's really, really important. Your support is vital in all our endeavours, and of course the financial support you provide for students is more valued than ever as our nation's economy faces great challenges, and we as a college are going to face challenges, as I know you are as well. Some people say that there is no longer a role for women's institutions and organisations, and some said that to me before I came here. Of course, the status of the college is ultimately decided by the governing body, consulting with you as alumni and others. But I disagree fundamentally with the notion that a women's college is an outdated institution. I think a women's college is a brilliant exemplar of a different way for women to study. It's something which came from the past when women couldn't enter male-only colleges, but which has a new and exciting purpose in the present. Until women achieve true equality in society, institutions which support women are needed and can be of great use. They can both support women in specific ways, and they can speak up for women and help ensure women's voices are heard in policy debates and their rights championed in the corridors of power. I love this place, and I really mean that. You know, it's just a wonderful place, and it's been great seeing how some of you have been affected today, coming back after decades, and how much you loved it then, and there's just a terrific feeling about it. I don't think there's anything like it in the whole of the United Kingdom. In fact, there isn't. No offence meant to Newnham, it's not. It's just not got it. It's just not cool like we are. When I arrived, it was the students who told me how much they valued this college as a women's institution, which includes and welcomes men as fellow staff and visitors. Most strikingly, they told me how restful they found it as a place where they were not, as they put it, on display or on show. And those were their words, and I found those words chilling. They say the college gives them a break from a culture in society which is not always friendly to women. They can invite men here and to stay the night here, but on their terms, in a place where women are in control. And some of the problems that I hear about in other educational institutions, which I won't mention by name, we don't have those problems because this is our gaff, and men don't behave like that here. Some who study STEM subjects all day in departments where they are still very much in a minority say it's good to come back to a place where women are in a majority. Later in this speech, I will talk about research on the extraordinary pressure girls and young women feel under when they are outside the home, and the high levels of sexual harassment school and university students face. Our college provides a place where those challenges are understood and where we don't just offer a break from what is basically a form of female oppression, but we work to end that sort of harassment. We're fortunate that because of the Dawsons' generosity, we will be setting up what will be an outstanding service under our first head of Wellbeing, Dr. Susan Imrie, for our students here, but linking to the university's own improved services. Our Wellbeing service can be a first port of call for a student who is anxious or feeling low, but we want to support all our students. Cambridge is a challenging environment. Help and advice on good sleeping habits, workshops on balancing studies with exercise, relaxation and healthy eating. These are vital in fending off problems. Of course, we will also play a leading role in debates about whether too much is expected of students in some subjects. Are some workloads just too heavy? I'm concerned by statistics from the Office of National Statistics, which indicate that 37% of first-year university students in England suffer some form of depression. That's much higher than in non-students of their age, where just over a fifth suffered depression. Now, I can see that leaving home can be stressful, but young people embarking on a new adventure, one which will bring them more opportunities in life, ought to feel excited, not worried and low. And I think universities need to examine their consciences and their practices when you see figures like that, because they're shocking. Here at Murray Edwards, we're lucky. In many ways, our lives in college exemplify the notions of holistic living. We live in a wonderful grade 2-star set of buildings which contain our inspiring collection of women's art, the biggest in Europe, now renamed as what it was always named in the first place, and what it is, the Women's Art Collection. We have beautiful gardens where, unlike in some other colleges, our students can not only walk on the grass, but lie on it, pick the flowers, and grow vegetables and herbs. Students are taught in small groups by brilliant and devoted academics who are leaders in their fields. But we are not immune to the pressures outside, and I've thought a great deal about the role we should play in wider society in promoting the interests of girls and young women. I believe there is a crisis in the well-being of girls and young women, a crisis that has not been recognised and actually goes beyond Britain, across the Atlantic, and in quite a number of other European countries as well. I believe we have a duty as a unique institution of higher education for women to promote debate and discussion on the issues they face. This crisis is central to the lives of our own students, affecting them both before they enter and while they are here, so we cannot ignore it. Our college is almost 70, and this year I myself became 70. Reaching 70 years and 10, and assuming the role of a president of a women's college has led me to think a lot about the position of women today. The story of women in the UK and the West is generally told as one of relentless advance in rights and status. Here at Cambridge, for example, women were prohibited from being awarded degrees until 1948. The 50th anniversary of the first women to be admitted to all male colleges is being celebrated this year. In 2021, there were more female undergraduates than male. 15 out of 31 heads of house are now women, so we just need one more, and we've taken over. That's how the story of women is often told, the story of our relentless rise. Women on boards, heading up companies, running major institutions. Articles appear saying men feel they are now the ones suffering prejudice. Hey, we even have a female prime minister, our country's third, and wonderful I'm sure she is. But I believe that deeper analysis shows that in many ways, life today for girls and young women is much worse than when I was young 50 years ago. I also think that the problems girls and young women suffer are perceived as being their personal problems to be dealt with individually by giving them therapy for their mental distress or advice on their diets. Excuse me. But while those problems present through individuals, they are issues for societies to fix. And I believe that we have betrayed the hopes of girls and young women in our country. and has squandered the advances that feminists fought for and achieved. The rights women have won have been rendered hollow in meaning to the huge numbers of girls and young women who are suffering levels of depression, self-hatred, and despair which frighten me. It starts so young. When I was a child of 6, I never thought about my self-image or my body. I just lived my life. Research here at Cambridge, led by Dr. Terry Apter, suggests that concerns over weight now start as young as 6. Half of 6-year-old girls questioned said they wished they were 3 sizes smaller. The problem is prevalent in the US too. The National Organization for Women there found that 53% of girls said they were unhappy with their bodies, rising to 78% by the age of 17. We talk about reining in the power of social media, but I see far too little change despite the fact that social media giants privately accept their responsibility. In March 2020, internal research by Facebook, owners of Instagram, was leaked. And here's some of what it said. 32% of teen girls said that when they felt bad about their bodies, Instagram made them feel worse. And in the words of Facebook itself, teens blame Instagram for increases in the rate of anxiety and depression. 13% of UK users of Instagram reported suicidal thoughts which they themselves traced back to Instagram. And in the US, it was 6%. And we've been reading all week, haven't we, about the tragic case of Molly Russell. Eating disorders were rare in my childhood, and so was obesity. Today, according to the National Child Measurement Programme in England, more than 10% of girls aged 4 to 5 are obese, and more than 20% of girls aged 10 to 11 are obese. So, should we blame those individuals and their parents, or should we ask why? And why the powerful food industry is allowed to advertise, for example, junk food in popular family programs, and successive governments watered down obesity strategies. We now read that our new government is about to abandon Boris Johnson's obesity strategy. Newspapers berate parents for failing to cook for their children. But how many children are taught to cook at school, as I was, and nor were their parents actually? Of course, it was wrong that in my day, only girls learned to cook. But the answer to that sexism shouldn't have been to drop cookery lessons. I can't think of a more important subject to teach in an obesity crisis. And meanwhile, eating disorders in girls and young women are rife. NICE says that 90% of those with eating disorders are female. A 2018 study found that 15% of young women in high-income countries have eating disorders. Now, I know that this might seem like a litany of despair, but please bear with me just a little longer, because a key issue I want to highlight is that statistics about the problems girls and young women face are too often presented separately. We will read one day about obesity, the next about self-image, the next about depression and anxiety, and then about bulimia, and then about suicide. The problems are not linked to each other in this coverage. Just this week in the Times, I read statistics on anxiety in young people on one page of a national newspaper, and then when I turned over, figures on the obesity crisis presented as a completely separate problem. This dividing off of issues is particularly true of sexual harassment and assault, which are generally treated as quite separate problems to the issues I have just talked about. But how can they not be linked? If you are constantly denigrated and humiliated, why would you feel good about yourself and about your body? In the 2017 Girls' Attitude Survey, commissioned by Girl Guiding, 64% of girls and young women aged 13 to 21 said they had experienced sexual harassment at school, college, or university in the last year. And I found that so unbelievable. I had to go back twice to check it and then look at other figures in case that was some outlying survey. But there were similar results from other surveys. The admirable campaign, Everyone's Invited, launched in 2020, highlighted widespread sexual abuse in school. There have been more than 50,000 submissions to its website, detailing girls' experience of what has been called a rape culture in schools and colleges. Soma Sara, one of its leaders, says in her new book that teenage girls' experience of sex is, and I quote her, saturated with shame, embarrassment, humiliation, and pain. She blames the ubiquity of hardcore porn. A government survey found most children aged 16 to 17 had viewed pornography they found disturbing or aggressive, and many said this pornography had influenced their behavior. And if you look at some of the stats on this, the huge percentage of male children who have watched pornography by the age of 12, and the really horrible statistic for the number of boys who watch porn every single day. And it doesn't go away just because a girl turns into a woman and goes to university. Cambridge University students made national headlines this year when they complained about a state of spiking of drinks in clubs. And I know those of you who came along to our International Women's Day were shocked when some of our own students described how frightened they are to go out here in this small city. One said that harassment is so common, students don't even bother telling each other when they have suffered it. So when we think about all the problems assailing young women, we shouldn't be surprised by how bad they say they feel. 26% of young women experience a common mental health disorder, more than 3 times as many as young men. The rate of self-harm among young women is twice that of young men. The NSPCC says that 72% of those in suicide counselling are girls. Just this week, the British Journal of Psychiatry published a major study showing that in just a 10-year period from 2008 to 2018, the percentage of women aged 18 to 24 found to have generalized anxiety disorder had nearly quadrupled from 8% to 30%. And again, I had to read that more than once to really believe it. And that was before the pandemic. So many girls and young women are deeply troubled, so we should be deeply troubled too. We need to have deeper conversations about the needs of girls and young women. I want to be clear that the past was not a great place for women. When I was at school, if a girl became pregnant, she had no right to an abortion, even if she had been raped. The pill became available to young women who were single only in my first year at university. The first film I produced and directed on network television was about rape in marriage, then not a crime. A man could only be prosecuted for injuries inflicted during the rape. Building societies denied women mortgages. Women have fought for their rights over the last 50 years and won extraordinary victories. But we need to recognize that while rights and status are vital to health, happiness, and success in life, they are no guarantee of health, happiness, and success in life. We need to be clear that while young people of all genders face many of the same problems, girls and young women face specific problems which should be examined in their own right. I believe they are being let down utterly. The levels of misery and physical and emotional ill health are terrifying. And for me as a feminist, I'm sometimes overwhelmed by disappointment. But I believe too that something can be done. And we at Murray Edwards want to be part of looking for solutions. We plan to make Murray Edwards a policy centre for the well-being of girls and young women, where ideas are highlighted, debated, and discussed. We're fortunate indeed to be here at Cambridge, where some of the best research relevant to these problems is carried out. To cite just a little of the work going on, Sarah Jane Blakemore's studies of the teenage brain, Tamsin Ford's work on the mental health of children and adolescents, the work of the Family Research Centre. Academics at Cambridge, like Professor of Psychiatry Edward Bullmore, are highlighting the false dichotomy between physical and mental health. And one of the most exciting adventures in this city at the moment is the proposed building of a purpose-built, fully integrated physical and mental health care system in the new Children's Hospital. The hospital aims to show the benefits of integrated care applied to eating disorders, self-harm, and a range of chronic physical health conditions that cause mental health vulnerabilities. I know from decades making television programs that brilliant ideas created at universities often don't reach the wider public. And we want to help bring some of the great thinking here at Cambridge and other institutions to wider attention. Over time, we would like to be part of commissioning research. There are still many gaps in our understanding of the problems of girls and young women and of what might help them. We also want to engage with policymakers. I think most of us here would think it was good news that Liz Truss this week reversed her decision to scrap the role of Minister for Women and appointed Catherine Fletcher. We would like to engage with her and her counterparts in other parties, as well as charities and organisations. Some charities have called for there to be a specific government policy on the mental health problems of girls and young women. The brilliant success of England's women's football team has made people really also consider how improved school sport for girls could improve physical and mental health. And it's really shocking how over decades sports and exercise at our schools has been whittled away. I'm not the only person who bangs on about the need for proper cookery lessons. And this country is, as far as I can see, united in calling for much tougher controls on social media. There are so many exciting and innovative ideas to be brought to the fore. We can be part of leading the fight back against the negativity girls experience in their lives and in their feelings about themselves. Here at Murray Edwards, we have always done more than just give young and brilliant women a brilliant education. We have aimed to empower them. I believe our own students will benefit immensely from us bringing to the college leading academics and policymakers from Cambridge and beyond to engage in exciting world-class debate about changing society for the better of women's lives. And I hope you will join us too in these discussions. Our new students are about to arrive, and we will do everything we can to ensure that they are successful in their studies and happy, healthy, and balanced young women. And with that thought, I'll finish. Thank you. So thanks for listening so long. We've now got time for anybody who wants to ask any question, make any point. Please feel free, but you don't have to if you don't want to. Yes.
Thank you for such a clear talk and for caring so much. I'm trying to formulate my question. When you think of a patient, you try and cure their disease, but there's also preventative medicine. You touched on prevention. And I just want, and particularly, and also you touched on pornography, and earlier we were talking how strong an influence that has on young boys particularly, but also how it frightens young girls, but they do watch it. What ideas do you have or might emerge? I mean, how can we all deal with that, the prevention end, and the building of respect?
Yeah, I mean, with pornography, I personally believe that pornography should be discussed at school in lessons. I know this is a very shocking idea to many parents, but the fact is that most boys and about a third of girls are watching pornography. And boys and girls are getting their ideas of what sex is before they've even had sex by watching porn. And we know that there's evidence that you don't want to go into on a Saturday afternoon of the things that boys expect of girls because they've seen it, and their lack of awareness of that not being a nice thing for a girl. And we also know that girls do not feel sufficiently empowered to say no. And there was a very interesting short experiment actually shown on Channel 4 at a school in Warrington, where they did engage young teenagers with direct subject discussion on porn. It was extraordinary the extent to which the children already knew all about porn. But in a very interesting exercise, the trainer got the boys to admit what they would like. And then this was the hard bit, but the girls did dare to do it. The girls said what they thought about that. And they said they didn't want that. They didn't like those ideas. And what was interesting was that the boys didn't realize. And when the girls were empowered to say it, the boys said, oh yeah, that's not nice, is it? I can understand that. And when at the end of that experiment, they discussed rolling it out across the school, the teachers said the parents would never accept it. And I think we've got to face the fact that this is a parallel life that so many young people are living, and we can't not talk about it in the education system. It's too prevalent and too awful, and this prevalence of porn cannot be disconnected from the horrible ways in which boys, including students, talk to girls. But the other reason we have to talk about it is we have to say to girls, you do not have to agree to this, and this is not normal, because both sides have been led to feel it's normal and it isn't.
Yeah, something I just checked in with my son, which I find really concerning. It's great, he's here.
Don't make him embarrassed at all.
Finish the question, everyone's looking.
I completely agree that sex education should be taken, should play a much more central role in part of their kind of wider curriculum, and that it should be, absolutely talked about. But what concerns me is that there seems to be, certainly in the schools that I've experienced, it's only some poor teacher who's like shoved through the door, who has no professional qualifications in that specific thing. And given it's increasingly difficult, delicate, super important, I don't understand why we don't have those
well,
professionals.
again,
Is that
personally,
something? What do you think about
I
that?
completely agree with you. You don't expect in secondary school that there's a teacher who can teach ancient Greek one day and maths the next. And what was interesting about the experiment that I talked about is this was a highly expert woman from Holland, where actually those issues are talked about in schools much more openly. And the idea that sex education is just, as you say, some poor teacher is just expected to start talking about these issues, I don't think that's on. And I also don't think it's on for their relationship with the children and young people, because they're teaching them other subjects and they know their parents, etc. In an ideal world, it would be a separate person with real expertise who doesn't interact with them in the rest of their daily lives. I think we have to take it seriously, because you have to see the effect of porn as really affecting girls' actual health. And it's not taken nearly seriously enough. And you see lots of debates in newspapers about sex education generally. I find most of that debate a bit outdated and not really relevant. I think this is what we should be discussing. How are we going in schools to counteract the effect of pornography? Because we have to do that. Children now at school are taught about the dangers of the internet. That is taught to them, and not necessarily brilliantly, but it's accepted. We have to teach them about that. One of the biggest dangers of the internet is pornography. So we should be teaching that, definitely, and it should be people who know how to do it. I mean, I used to be a teacher. I wouldn't like to suddenly try to teach a good lesson about how you counteract pornography. Thank you, it's a good point.
Just linking onto that point, I'm a head of PSHE from this year in April at a high school for girls, and I've always been to a girls' school myself, and it is that massive challenge in schools. So we get 1 hour a fortnight on the curriculum, and we will deliver in year 10 the one static lesson on how do we deal with the danger of pornography. But I have, for example, a team of 40 teachers. They could be maths teachers, they could be science teachers, and so they come to me and say, well, how do I deal with this discussion, because I feel uncomfortable? And then it's so difficult. And the students will say to me, well, miss, do the boys' school have this lesson? And then there's that inconsistency, because I think, well, the boys should. And so I guess I wanted your advice really for practitioners. How do you think we should go about it?
I mean, you're all making me think that I'm saying we should be a policy centre, and I'm thinking, well, what should be the first subjects that we discuss? And maybe that is a subject that we should discuss. And when we promote debate, it's not with the idea that we as a college know things. I think you would be a really interesting person, for example, to take part in debate and discussion about that. So I hope that
it's
we
been
can
so interesting to listen to.
link up after this and really think, how could we do that, and how could we do it well, and maybe bring up some good ideas about it, without pretending, oh, suddenly we know all about it.
Yeah, no, but those statistics as well for our teachers, I think, would be brilliant for them to know. Yeah, because sometimes that gap between research and practice is so big as well. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Yes. Oh, we've got an online question. Yeah.
So this is from Carol McQuire. She says, thank you for the excellent talk. It would be good to add undiagnosed neurodiversity in girls to the list of factors for mental health difficulties and what can be done to help young women.
Yeah, and I think neurodiversity, I haven't touched on it in this talk because you can't talk about everything, but I think that's a very interesting subject area, as lots of you know, for quite a long time. Lots of people believe that young women were not neurodiverse, that was only boys and young men. And also there are lots of interactions with other issues in girls and young women's lives. So again, I think that is, if we're collecting subjects we should be discussing, I think that would be a very good subject to discuss. Thank you. Oh, I think you had your hand up before. Could we? And then there's a gentleman here, and then down there.
Thank you. A couple of points. First of all, it really resonated with me about the idea of a coach for young women here, about, first of all, having an opinion, which for me, when I came to my interviews at Cambridge, it was the first time somebody actually asked me what I thought about something. And I remember feeling massively shocked about that. So that's a fantastic area. And I think that's possibly slightly linked to the second point about giving girls a voice, like asking them what they think about something. I also had a further point to make. I'm a parent of 2 teenage girls now, and I'm at the point, my eldest daughter is 13, and it's knowing how I should talk to her as a parent about these things. So I think possibly another element of the work that you're doing is considering the parental chat, if you like, that you should have.
Yeah.
I'm quite open with my children. We discuss sex, periods, all those difficult, embarrassing subjects quite often. But having the discussion about pornography, for me, as a parent, it's quite a tricky area. And at what point, what age should I be having those conversations? And how could I support lessons at school that they might be having? Or I think it's maybe a 3-way discussion between education, the child or young person, and the parent, for being able to have that open dialogue and it just being a normal conversation rather than something that, to be honest, seems quite a shocking thing that I need to be thinking about, but it's really, really thought-provoking. Yeah,
and difficult for you to talk about, and maybe it would be even more difficult if you were talking to a boy. And lots of parents complain, I don't know what my child's learning or not learning at school. I know I have a daughter, and she would come home from school sometimes, and I would just have to work out, what on earth did you learn today? Because I'm trying to backtrack there to understand why you're asking me such intimate questions.
Exactly.
So I think that's a very good idea. And the other thing is, I've given you my thoughts here. We have 600 young women here. So how are we going to work with them, and what exciting things can they tell us are good ideas about what we should be doing? If they were here, not you, they might be saying well, they would, wouldn't they? They'd be saying something completely different. they might be saying, stop being so depressing. But yes, I think most of our alumni, or many of them, are parents, so that is a very good point. But I do want to think how to engage with students as well without giving them the impression, oh, you're here to learn how to be doctors or vets or ancient Greek scholars. Well, could you also solve all the problems of the world while you're at it? So, but I am very interested to know what they think. So thank you. Oh yes, so a gentleman here and then down here. Oh right, yeah, but this gentleman here had his hand up before.
Regarding the increase in troubles with self-image from 50 years ago, what do you think might best be done about that? What kind of solutions should be being considered?
Well, now you see, you're asking me to solve all the problems of the world myself. I mean, I definitely think doing something about porn. I do think we should talk more about self-image, and we don't talk enough specifically about self-image to girls and boys at school, because I'm not saying that boys and people of all genders don't suffer these problems. One of the reasons that I think our art collection is so inspiring is it's lots of different women's images of what it is to be a woman. And I think a big message to give girls and young women that our collection can contribute to is you can be a really fabulous girl or woman, and you don't all have to look in the same way. You can look your way. And I'm very interested, if I could get a bit of money, in working with school children to encourage them to think about what is it to be a girl? What does a girl look like? What does a woman look like? Because they've got that idea in their head about what does a girl look like? What does a woman look like? But get them to really think about it. Well, a girl or a woman, she looks like you, she looks like you, she looks like you. She doesn't need to look at that like that specific image. But again, I think you have to really talk about it and not pretend that it's not an issue. And I think with a lot of the things that I've discussed today, they're just not covered in education at all. And girls are left on their own to look at themselves in the mirror at night and look at fabulous images of beautiful women and compare themselves. And that needs to be discussed in school and by parents to help them. I'm conscious that you have had your hand up for a while, and then we can go to the person online and up at the back. Thank you.
Yep, I was thinking as well, relating to the previous point, that as parents, for example, there's a course before you have children, before you have babies, the prenatal course, but there's nothing that says, this is a course for for teenagers. But from the parents' perspective, I have 3 boys. They're still young, but I know that the time is going to come where we're going to face the issue. And as a more proactive approach, I don't know if it's taking place yet or not, about changing the school curriculum. I mean, it has taken ages, for example, for climate change to be incorporated, and it's happening. But I don't know if there's anything about not teaching children about porn in schools, but coming from parents towards the government rather than just letting something hopefully will happen without being proactive.
Yeah, no, those are very good points. Thank you. And you had a point from online.
So I've got 2 questions. Firstly, how does the college's policy surrounding the admission of transgender students and support for transitioning affect the college's mission to tackle unique issues faced by today's young women?
Well, I think we can do both. As a college, we've said very clearly that if you identify as a woman, then you're a woman. We're not questioning that. We're not undermining that. That does not mean that we ignore the massive amounts of evidence that exist about the specific problems of women. And the two aren't against each other. You can talk about the specific problems of girls and young women, and you can be absolutely tolerant about transgender issues. There isn't a conflict for me.
Okay, and second question from online. Consent and coercive control awareness can be integrated into schools fairly
Sorry, I'm afraid I can't quite hear you.
Consent and coercive control awareness can be integrated into schools fairly easily with good materials. Why not enable research to produce these materials accessibly?
Well, a very good idea, and I can't say that I'm an expert and that material doesn't exist. As I say, I'm standing here as a president of a women's college, not a major expert researcher in every subject. But what I think we can do, because we're a Cambridge University college, is we can bring together experts who would be able to answer questions like that. Yes, at last, it's your turn.
Thank you. Thank you so much for your analysis, and I couldn't agree more with many of the points that you've raised, particularly about the need for sex and relationships education. But there is just one other aspect. Very often when we talk about mental health, by definition, it implies problems. Whereas I think that educationally, we ought to also to be thinking about mental fitness, which mirrors concern with physical fitness, in order to give people agency about building their own resilience and their own mental health, because too often we simply think about a deficit model, and it is known that there are things, whether it's social interaction, creativity, physical exercise, all of which help to build that mental fitness. So what do you think we should be doing on that one?
I absolutely agree, and a key element of our well-being service will be not to assume that anybody who says she's feeling a bit low has a mental health problem. For example, if you stay up all night studying several nights in a row, you're not going to feel great. And I mentioned just in passing that we will be talking about good sleeping habits, exercise, rest, relaxation, eating properly. All of these things are absolutely vital, and we mustn't make our students, we mustn't undermine their sense of well-being. I mean, when I was at university, to give you a story, I didn't feel very well, and I went along and I said to the GP, I don't know why I don't feel very well, and he sent me to a psychiatrist, and the psychiatrist said, and I often make this point at work, if somebody ever said, you're mad, I used to say, actually, unlike almost all people, I know I'm not mad, because I was sent to a psychiatrist who said, there's nothing at all wrong with you, but you get up at 5 o'clock every day, go to parties till about 3, and then you read, and then you sleep, and then you get up at 5 o'clock the next day. That's actually what's wrong with you. And it sounds ridiculous, but it hadn't really struck me. She said, you see, human beings were not made to live like that. So if you just go to bed at night and then get up in the morning, you'll feel a lot better. And I did. And so we mustn't, I do worry about everybody we've gone from not talking about it, so we talk about it so much that everybody thinks they've got something wrong with them. They haven't. And when I came here, I have to say I was shocked that the library was open all night. And I keep saying, but nobody agrees with me, but maybe I'll win by the time I leave. We should lock the library at midnight and then open it again at 6:30 in the morning. And then I know that colleges talk a lot about how important it is to heat libraries properly overnight and to make sure that they're cool in the summer, whereas I believe the opposite. I would turn off all the heating in libraries overnight and then make them really boiling in the summer to put people off. But I do think it's an important point. How can we be saying, right, on the one hand, we have a well-being service and sleeping's really important, and we keep our library open all night? I just say that honestly, I am alone in, nobody else agrees with me anywhere in the college or the university, but it's just blindingly obvious to me. Yes. Oh, yeah, sorry. Oh, well, I think you made a, yes. Oh.
Can we teach kindness and empathy? It's just that I was really struck when the boys said they hadn't realised, oh yes,
Yeah.
it's horrible. And it struck a bell with a theatre project we ran for people with learning disabilities talking about hate crime and mate crime. Sixth formers didn't realise that these people had feelings. And so is there a way somehow we can go back to this kindness and empathy?
I agree, we do need to do that, and there is a general, I accept there's a general loss of respect for the way other people feel and think in society, and some really horrible ways of debating and discussing. But now I have to come to you because I'd really like you to embarrass your mother.
Don't worry. No, I was just going to say that, you know, I am at a mixed school, and you said that a third of young girls watch porn. I mean, like, from someone being in a mixed school, it's definitely more than that. It's a lot more than that.
Really?
And I think the history of kind of the feminist struggle has you know, been against pornography, but also against sexual repression. And I was just wondering if there is any discussion in the sphere of like trying to integrate discussions about pornography and the dangers of pornography in schools, how that discussion works with balancing promoting girls' sexual pleasure, and kind of like trying to show that you know, there are dangers with pornography, but this isn't tied up with guilt about sexuality.
That's really interesting, and of course there's a huge debate at the moment about, is pornography okay? Because that is some women's expression of their sexuality, whereas as an older feminist, I would say most pornography is not the genuine expression of a free woman's sexuality. It's a denigrating vision from a man. But I think there's a really interesting debate there, and that's a debate that older teenagers should have, because I know that a lot of girls are told, if you don't want to watch porn, like there's something wrong with you, you're in denial about your own sexual pleasure. So discussing what's the difference between those two things is a really vital debate. But I am disappointed that you didn't embarrass your mother, although you made one of our best points. Yes, oh, definitely. Yes. And maybe with just the last one or two points so that you can rest up a bit before more fun. Just here, behind you.
Hello, thank you for the really interesting talk. So I studied STEM subjects as an undergraduate and experienced harassment. And this is not at Cambridge, by the way. And I also studied at Murray Edwards as a postgraduate. And I just wanted to see if there's a way we can influence other universities and men at other universities to kind of stop this behavior against women, because it did have an impact on my mental health. So I guess just, in the work that you do around policies, if you could extend that to all universities.
Definitely, and our aim is, yes, we will work with, I hope, and highlight the work of people at Cambridge, but we want to have debates that are relevant to everybody. And I do think that because we're a higher education institution and a women's institution, a nearly unique women's institution, we ought to take a role in promoting debate about harassment at universities. And we are going to have, for International Women's Day, an event about harassment, assault and violence against women. And I want to invite people from other universities to that, not just our own. Thank you. Well, that's all quite big, and but very important. And I think you made really good points there. And I'm going to ask the team to make sure that we've noted those key points, because just using those, we could have a year of events at the college. But you are allowed to enjoy yourselves as well. And so I think the plan is now that you can have a little rest. You might want to lie down, cry, hit your head somewhere. And then at 6 o'clock in FDR, we've got drinks and then dinner, even more eating, and then the Ceilidh. So thank you very much for all your interest and your great ideas. Thank you. Yeah. Yes.
As the new entrants, and said there are 24 hours in the day, 8 for sleeping, 8 for working, and 8 for being an undergraduate in. But I could never make 3 8s into 24.
But look, she was ahead of her time, wasn't she? 8 hours for sleeping. That's like a really radical idea at Cambridge now. Thank you very much. Thank you.